You know, a lot of the time when I'm trying to start a podcast, it's kind of like any sort of work, like going to the gym or, doing a chore around the house or whatever. The activation energy is what's so hard to bypass. Right? To get a kind of rolling start just to get myself going. Even though I know I'm about to have a lot of fun, part of me is always dreading the little bit of work that it's going to involve. And so today, in order to give myself that activation energy, I look back to something that happened earlier this week. And that's when Enobarbus, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Enobarbus wrote in on the Discord and let me know how much they were enjoying the show. And importantly, that if anybody asked, they were going to recommend this right alongside The Bad Spot, which, if you're listening to this show, there's no way you're not aware of The Bad Spot by Matt Risby. And I said it at the time, I'm saying it again, those words are very touching, and right now it's exactly the sort of thing that helps me break through this activation energy to know I gotta do it for Ano, so... So, once again, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, but if... So I figured I'd start off the show at least acknowledging that, because if there's one thing that's definitely true, if you write in and say something, I'm probably going to mention it on the show. So, thank you again. Let's get to it.
Stranded in space on a ship crashing into the atmosphere of an unknown planet, Emile Spencer knew that the only way to survive would be by his own wits and guile. He vowed that somehow he would find and slay the titanic cosmic beast that put him in this predicament, VY572. With every installment, we follow Emile's explorations and discoveries on this journey of revenge against all odds. I'm Midnight Jester, and this is the Left Behind Starforge series.
I guess now I have to do the part that actually matters, the stuff that deals with the game. So, activation energy, go. All right, we're going to do the recap. Not too much to recap, honestly, because, as you're aware from listening to last episode, it was very important, I enjoyed myself, but not a lot to mention really happened. It was a big planning episode, because we started the episode arriving and finding that there was a blockade, and we ended the episode in the same place, basically. Emile and Tycoon of the Beowulf hashed out terms to figure out how they were going to approach this situation. What is the best way to pass this blockade? And ultimately, the big important thing that happened was Emile is going to wind up abandoning the Reacher, using it as a kind of bait, and joining the crew of the Beowulf so that they together can just try and sneak around this blockade. Emile took the time to kind of clean up all of the data as best as possible that was left on the Reacher, but we did find out he didn't have enough time to do quite everything before his unfortunate EMP power, well, sometimes it's fortunate, but in this moment it unfortunately went off and wiped the process. There was no time to get it restarted. It means that there are some little bits of evidence left behind. Importantly, the evidence that the Reacher and the Beowulf interacted. Somebody who analyzes that is going to be able to tie them together and maybe be in pursuit. Who knows? But that's a problem for another day, because we're about to have to deal with the blockade in front of us, finally. But first, before we do that, we're at the beginning of a session, and while I did make up a lot of our momentum problem last time, I do want to set a little vignette here. And in this case, it's actually less about the momentum and more about last time we saw Emile's room back on the Reacher, and we saw how it was, this solitary space that was in where the workshop was all set up. He had just kind of his own space where he could tinker on things, and that's where he chose to sleep. I kind of want to quickly highlight the discrepancy between that and his existence on the new ship, because the Beowulf has a considerable more people crewing it. It's not like I said the Reacher this whole time, I'm pretty sure. The Stardust. Emile's previous ship was the Stardust. The one before that was the Reacher, and I realize this because I'm now saying it's not crewed on the level of the Reacher, where it's this just gargantuan ship with, the Reacher was kind of like being on the Enterprise or something. It's just massive. Since we usually make Star Wars comparisons on here, it would be like serving on a Star Destroyer, but less evil. Just crew all over the place, many different decks, many different areas. way, way smaller than that, we get to ships more on the size of like the Stardust and the Beowulf. I think the Beowulf is a little bit larger than the Stardust, but not by that much. It's definitely more heavily armed. We knew that about it. And I think it's just got more people crewing it, whereas the Stardust was largely empty for how big of a ship it was. You know, it's prisoner transport. It was a relatively simple ship, but given this one's like complement of weapons and everything, and just the nature of being an outlaw, it's just got a little bit more of a full complement of people here. And so it's Emile. So to set the scene for this vignette, we start with Emile kind of packing up the last of his stuff from the workshop from the Stardust before getting ready to just send it on course and, you know, put in some coordinates, get it to autopilot towards the blockade in a way that that looks more like it's coasting, so that it looks like, you know, who knows what happened to it. It wasn't just set up to be bait like this. But he gets all of that. He's taking like one last look at the ship, and then we sort of cross-dissolve over to him holding some of this same sort of personal effects and things, you know, Shark's journal on top, the thing that had the tie to his hometown. He's carrying all this stuff, and now we see that unlike this sort of huge amount of personal space, I think Emile's new room is going to be in the middle of like a galley, basically. Like it's the equivalent, it's a bunk room, you know, like it's as if there's just like rows of hammocks and stuff. Like nobody has a lot of space. Now, it's not literally that. We're not going that full pirate ship. They are indeed going to be bunk beds. But, you know, it's very Spartan in that way. He's sharing the room with probably at least a dozen other people, maybe 24. Bunk beds and foot lockers. It's just enough room to be able to lie down at the end, but no space to call your own. So Emile is walking into this room as, you know, kind of like the new student to the class. It's that sort of vibe where everybody else is already in here sort of, they're like shooting the shit on their bunk beds, talking about all kinds of just whatever's going on. And Emile walks in the room and there's just like hush and murmurs as nobody knows exactly what to make of him. Everybody knows who he is. They know his reputation. And I think it's going to be like, a lot of people start just kind of clearing out, like they're not comfortable just having casual conversation with him around. And a lot of people, you know, walking out of the room, kind of like giving a little bit of a side eye as they walk by and kind of brush past him in the narrow doorway. And so the room empties out, and Emile has it to himself as he moves over to the bunk that he was told earlier to, like, you're this rack over here, and goes and kind of like puts his stuff down, just sits down on the bed and takes in a breath and reassures himself, like, okay, it's going to be a change, but you've gotten through worse. And then not long afterwards, Vert comes into the room and just like strides over to the bed and goes, "Oh, no, not a chance. You're top bunk. Get your shit and move up there." What? Does it really matter all that much? Oh yeah, it does. If you're getting up in the middle of the night, I want to feel you going up and down that ladder. I have every confidence you could just quietly sneak away from the bottom bunk, but I'm going to wake up if you do it from the top. And get your ass up there. And Emile, with a sigh, gets up from the mattress down below, and as he's about to start moving his things up there, this crew member simply says, "Emile Spencer, Tycoon wants to see you now." And so Emile looks to Vert and says, "I guess we're both going to see Tycoon then. Come on." And that'll be it for this little vignette. Let's... You know, I'm not going to give myself the +1 momentum for it. I feel like the line is too blurred between... Like, it's not like we're now returning to play from our viewpoint. We're just going to be continuing on with the very next thing that happens. So, is that really just its own vignette worth a momentum? I don't think so. We're just going to continue from there. So, Emile and Vert and this new person, they, let's get a name for them. So let's see, we've got somebody who goes by Shutdown. Ooh. I like that pairing with that kind of voice that I gave him. So yeah, Shutdown, who, let's get a little bit of just a first look. Scruffy. That works. This person has got a pretty bristly, wide beard. And they're large. Yeah, this is all kind of pairing together. Scruffy and large and talking like this to Emile. I think we can picture this sort of Zangief looking dude. So he's probably one of the few people that we interact with that can stand pretty toe to toe with Vert, even in his power armor. Vert is probably a little bit taller as a result of it, but like this guy's no slouch. Escorts them through the hallways towards a sort of, it's not the cockpit itself, it's more like a ready room with like a big holographic table in the middle where it has a representation of the space around. There's all these like indications of like markers of the system and where the planets are and everything and their relative position by the sun and the blockade, and all these things have just these little icons that project up just like a few inches from the table itself. And Tycoon is there, and there's like an XO who's standing next to him that I'm just gonna get his name now, just even though we wouldn't really know it, but they may be relevant. Cypher. I'm gonna have to do everything I can to not just make him Joe Pantoliano from The Matrix. Let's get a first look on Cypher. Distracted, honestly. Maybe distracted by Emile. And youthful. Okay, so this is a relatively young second in command. Or maybe that's probably... He's just... These kids, they're always on their phones all day. These new XOs. So yeah, Cypher is... We're gonna say he's distracted just in the moment by just other things going on. Perhaps they are working on making sure, like, they are coordinating things on, like, a data pad with certain other members of the crew in different parts of the ship to make sure that, like, the right complement of weapons are ready to go if this goes ugly, but nothing that'll show up as easily on scans. Like, they don't want to be using too much power draw, but it's his job right now to... Actually, let's find out. Is Cypher a dude? Cypher a gal? Is Cypher a non-binary pal? Let's see. I'm just going to randomly determine this. Okay. Cypher is actually a gal. So Cypher, she's relatively young and just distracted with task, but still very, like, orderly about her. Like, I want to say that Cypher is has that kind of classic commanding officer sort of, like, very properly dressed, and everything is, you know, all the shoes are shiny, everything is done up just right. Hair tied back tightly. But yeah, working on this data pad, not really paying as much attention to what's going on in the room right now. These are not the only people in the room. Like, obviously Tycoon is there. And I think there might be a couple of other just pretty low-down crew members that are just, you know, they're the worker bees of this area. They don't have any particular, like, official position within this ship. But they're here to help manage, you know, there's like a tech that might be helping with the table in case anything goes wrong, like all kinds of just little stuff like that. A few other people in the room, some runners that might communicate relevant information if necessary. I want to say that there's one person in particular that's across the room who's, let's get a call sign for them too. I talked last time about, I want this place to be more populated with just like all kinds of people. This person's name is Splinter. And same question as before about gender. Splinter's gender is a little bit ambiguous. Not immediately clear, but one thing that's perhaps occluding that a little bit is they've got these like very wide lensed goggles on their face that are like highly magnified. So they've got that effect where like it looks like their pupils are just huge. And Splinter is a little bit like they're lean, but like tight, wiry muscles, and they look a little bit like they've had too much caffeine or something, like very jittery, and those wide eyes through the goggles, they turn immediately to Emile, and it's noteworthy, like they like lock on, and even though the rest of the body is kind of a little bit jittery, like never look anywhere else. I'm gonna roll a character roll for Splinter. Oh, I get action and theme, so let's see. Advance and prize. In this context, considering this is a Vault Hunter ship, I think the prize is about the vault. I think advance and prize makes me think of somebody who's like almost like a trap finder, like the first person to go into new places that they're exploring to just make sure everything is safe. Like, Splinter is so jittery because they got to be on edge about everything. They're very wary about all kinds of dangers because they are the vanguard that goes into very dangerous, unknown, and mysterious places that may have, like, weird technologies from old civilizations that aren't fully understood. They go to a lot of uncatalogued places. And so, yeah, as a result, they're just kind of really on edge all the time. But those wide through goggled eyes they're locked on Emile as he walks into the room, and they don't let go. And importantly, Splinter also kind of takes a step back from him and makes sure, Splinter is always standing with somebody else in between the two of them. Whether it is Cypher the XO or Tycoon, somebody's always in between them. They're kind of they tuck themselves back behind it to blend into the background a little bit. So Emile is in this room full of people, and Tycoon looks up from some discussion with somebody else, not Cypher, but one of the other just people who was running the table. We walk in and they're gesturing towards specific things and getting readings on the exact distance, and Tycoon says,
"Thank you for your prompt arrival. I hope you are finding this ship to your liking so far."
To be honest, I haven't really had a chance to get especially situated, but
yes, it is true that we have more pressing issues at hand. Perhaps once we make it past the blockade, you will have a more proper opportunity to move around and get to know the establishment. For now, however, as you see here, within the next 2 hours, our orbit is going to move us in line of sight of the blockade. We will no longer have the protection of the sun, and so it's going to be any moment that they may well pick us up on scanners.
We should be able to rely at least a little bit on the distortion field from the nearby radiation.
Yes, that is true, however. We do not know how long it will take them to notice a pattern within that distortion. We cannot rely on it. And so it is vitally important that by the time that arrives, they have not only picked up on the bait, but are thoroughly bringing everybody in to investigate. Do you have everything set up and ready to go over there? Is everything moved off and ready to go?
And Emile, pulls up some information on his own computer, goes through kind of a little bit of a checklist on what he's accomplished and everything. And I want to kind of flash back for a moment to do a secure and advantage move for something that we didn't explicitly do on screen, but I think would make a lot of sense. Emile wants to have this set up so he can do kind of a little bit of remote flying of the ship. Now, this would not be something that would be ideal for a long period of time. There's a lot of delays and everything. You wouldn't want to pilot the ship from afar, but while they have a signal line, if they were able to send a tight band to the ship, Emile could have it set up to take commands in that way, feed them into the controls of the computer, and allow it to be broadly pilotable from there. At the very least, he can give it a series of commands to follow, and it'll do all of that. And so I want to set that up as something that he has hopefully been able to successfully do. What if this move goes badly, it'll represent how he wanted to, but maybe the EMP blast kind of screwed that whole process up. So let's do it. This is going to be a secure and advantage with wits and definitely using the tech asset. Very, very applicable here, probably more than anything I've done. He's configuring this electronic system to be able to work remotely through signals they can send from this ship. So we get... All right, we get a nice strong hit. So successfully, we take +2 momentum and add +1 on our next move. So our momentum is now maxed out at 9 because we're still shaken. We kind of have a moment thinking about that. We see Emile having gotten all that set up and referencing it now in his little AR display about how he got that set up. And he simply says out loud, "It's time to find out." And he looks around the room for a moment and goes, I don't know who to ask about this, but whoever's in charge of communications around here, we're going to need to send a tight band over to the ship. I've got it all set up that as soon as it receives it, it's going to decode that information, process it, and interpret the commands as just a series of actions to go through the navigation system. We can pilot it exactly where we want. So, and Emile kind of walks up to the holographic table there and starts making some recommendations, perhaps. They collectively talk over, what is the best way to do it? As they're zooming out and figuring out okay, so, we need this ship to go here to draw their attention this way so that we can, I think maybe they're looking to have just enough time to orbit around the sun as quickly as they can kind of like cut through this part of the orbit where they're seen, to then like slingshot through on a particular vector to allow them to get past the blockade particularly quickly while their eyes are on the other direction. And maybe there's another point that they can find that like they're kind of like they'd be leapfrogging between a few different obstacles here. Things that they can blend in with decently well. And so they're talking it all out, figuring out like things that they could do to maybe try and look like it's a solar flare or something. Like when they pull off the maneuver and come out of hiding, like there are going to be readings that come up, but they can maybe blend it and make it look like natural phenomena enough. Anyway, they're planning out all of that on the table, and I kind of want to just get this all done in one move. You know, we spent a lot of time planning last time. Let's just get into the meat of it and like finally do this is just them trying to pull this off. We'll do it in a couple of moves. The first is about, it's kind of another secure and advantage move. Actually, to be honest, no, I just want to do it in one move. We have the connection to the other ship. Our momentum is maxed out anyway. We already have the +1. We're at our best possible situation to pull this off. So there's nothing that would stop Emile from getting the distraction to be where it's supposed to be. The important question is, when they do that, can they pull it off and get past without being noticed? So this is very much a face danger move. This is very much with deception, stealth, or trickery. It's like all of those things, really. So this is going to be a shadow move. And because Emile is the player character, we're going to do it through his dice. I think the reason why in the fiction that makes sense is Emile is the one directly in control of sending the remote, like getting the other ship in the right position. He's responsible for telling them when it is in position and like the timing of this all. Like even though he's not the only one coordinating this, it can make sense. And, you know, most importantly, he's the player character. We do things through him. I think you could argue that he's getting help from people that are like, that this is their thing. You could argue for an additional +1 or something, but we already have the +1 from the secure and advantage. Let's just do it. So, stealth of the +1 and 9 momentum. Let's get past this blockade. Okay, we got a miss with a match. However, because we have 9 momentum, we can turn that into a strong hit with a match. And, you know, the story is not about the blockade. The story is about actually getting to the planet and being able to do what's necessary to continue this vow. So if it were about the blockade, I'd maybe accept the miss of the match as a nice dramatic thing. But let's burn all this momentum. Let's get that strong hit with a match. So we're successful. We take +1 momentum, bringing us back to +2 now that we've burned it all. So indeed, they've set everything up correctly. They do all the things I talked about, where like the blockade gets completely distracted by this known fugitive kind of stolen ship that used to be part of the Imperium. It is a irregular enough thing to draw them off of their usual duties as a their attention is drawn off. Some of the ships kind of move out of the way more than would be expected. So they definitely have their window in there. They're able to make it look like a solar flare and everything. In fact, here's what's going to be the match. I'm going to say the match is that there actually is irregular solar activity that happened, like a flare comes out on this like kind of burning out, dying sun at the right kind of moment to really give them cover. And because of that, Emile, I'm going to give him the opportunity to actually charge up his firebrand move for free. Like, I'm not going to make him roll the thing. I'm just going to give him, since this was a double 5 match, I think that's worth bringing his EMP track up by 2. Because that is roughly analogous to him getting a weak hit on there, on the move, like which seems plenty generous. Like, honestly, I would have been willing to accept a full +3 and just max this out. But because it's only a double 5, we'll just say it's just 2 more on there. So he's sitting with that tracker on 4 out of 5. He's mostly full. He is ready to kind of use this EMP if necessary. Feeling just ultimately jazzed by it. And importantly, we get past the blockade. The Beowulf, it's tense on there because when they're doing it, they have to like shut down a lot of systems. Because they fire up all these engines to do it right, get this slingshot going, and then they have to shut a lot of things down in order to just kind of coast by and draw as little as possible as they go past certain sensors. They basically, they rocket the ship, they propel the ship forward and then shut it all down so that none of the power or anything stands out on the various kind of scans that might happen. And I feel like we actually see, I said before they'd be going between obstacle and obstacle. I actually don't like that. I think they literally just go through the... They go, like, so incredibly close to the blockade. It's just that they're not being... They've made it so they're not being picked up on anything, and because their literal attention is on different screens dealing and, like, getting boarding parties over to the Stardust, nobody just notices visually, like, hey, there's a ship there. So we see the Beowulf just, like, literally, it's like the two ships passing in the night kind of thing. It just goes past the blockade, and they have to keep it off for a while they're just, like, burning through the life support that's there. They're waiting for it. But eventually they are close enough to the moon of Umbra to be able to make it seem like they're just one of the ships passing around over there. They kick it all back on. It's completely successful. Everybody's looking to see, checking to make sure, like, they're doing their own scans, like if any of those ships turned around, do they have any of their weapons online? Is there any sign? Because they couldn't look into that while it was happening. Any sign that they noticed us? And the answer seems to be no. But there is every sign that they have a boarding party going to just utterly scrub the Stardust of anything they might find. And now, for the first time in many sessions, I think that's worth a mark of progress on my I will make amends to the people of Concord with the gift of a power core vow. We have finally made it out of the system. We made it past the blockade, which was definitely a significant obstacle in order to be able to do this. Now, importantly, there's still going to be a blockade on the way out if we go that same way. That's going to be a matter for another time, but for now, let's give ourselves this hit of progress. We are now up to 5 out of 10 on that vow. And we have made it to Umbra, home of Argosy Sigma base. Now, that was the planet full of the kind of space Amish, as I called them. We don't really have much of any reason to go there. They in particular are not going to have the kind of power core we're looking for, and we know that the settlement... And we know that the settlement of Vega over on Taiga, that has it set aside for us. The problem is that we do not have a route charted between the two. In fact, there are no routes between any of the planets in this sector. They all have their own charted routes, like out of Invidia Gate, but none of them connect to each other. So, yeah, let's try and do it relatively quickly because I'm mostly interested in the events on Taiga. I want to finally get to them this time. I feel like we've been putting this off for a little while. But let's try and do just a troublesome expedition to there, because I think particularly now that we're in the Terminus, there aren't going to be too many problems with, like, even uncharted space is only so dangerous. You have that great connection to the sector net, all like a lot of things that can help guide you that you wouldn't be able to count on in the Outlands. Plus, there's probably a little bit more law and order to make sure that you're not as likely to run into problems like some amount of pirates and stuff like that. They exist, but it's a really dangerous option out here. So anyway, let's undertake this expedition. This is going to be the charting the course between Umbra and Taiga. Just troublesome. And let's see. Are we moving at edge? Are we keeping under the radar? Are we staying vigilant? I think, okay. We don't actually have to keep under the radar anymore. Like, we're past the blockade. We dealt with that. We now just look like a regular ship. So we don't need to stay stealthy at this point. Well, it is still a ship of Vault Hunters, but I feel like it's not as immediately clear that's what this ship is. It's not like... Actually, let's find out. Let's roll an oracle really quickly. I don't know. The Beowulf, is it listed and known to be a Vault Hunter ship? Like, do they have to be careful around here? Because that's going to change this a lot. And I have no reason to think one way or the other, so we're just going to do this as a 50-50. So is the Beowulf listed as like a fugitive Vault Hunter ship? No. Oh, and I rolled a 98 on that. So even if it were almost certain that the Beowulf is listed as a fugitive ship, it still would have been no. So very, very clearly no. So yeah, with that being the case then, we don't really need to keep under the radar. We can just look like a regular ship. So we could either move at speed or stay vigilant. Obviously, I would be better at staying vigilant and using wits than going with edge on this to go at speed. But more importantly, I don't think there's any real reason to have to, like, really hustle there. We're not trying to beat anybody or anything like that. we don't even really have to worry about, like, we don't even really have to worry about getting to Cinder in time. I mean, vaguely, the faster we can get there, the better, so that they can set up their own defensive network, but nothing is especially leading anybody to Cinder right now, and part of the whole point of why they're there, it is such a hostile planet to live on that most people just write it out as even a possibility. Like, nobody would choose to live there. It's uninhabitable, but they have found a way. So yeah, with that in mind, let's just stay vigilant and roll our wits. And I'm not doing anything in particular to set us up for this. The only other module this ship has is the, like, heavy weaponry. So it doesn't have anything that we could really use to be able to be better at undertaking this expedition. So nothing like that. Let's just roll our wits, and we get another strong hit with a match, and this time we didn't even need to burn momentum on it. Yeah, we solidly knocked that one. Now it's only a double 2 match, so it's barely one. We'll just get a little bit of a nice thing on it. But we reach our waypoint, envision the location, and mark progress per the rank of the expedition. So that's going to be our first 3 right there. We get a good solid chunk of the way already. So we're going to find out a little bit about what this waypoint is, like where are we along the way. But the thing that we notice here that is going to represent the double 2 match, I'm going to get to tie this to something we haven't done in a long time. Why don't we have a smear here? Like, nearby, as they come out of their warp at this waypoint and have to recharge things, Emile notices that in the nearby area, whether it's fresh or old, we don't know, but the ship picks up a kind of strange signature. And people start talking about it and how it's like this, it seems to be like this piece of nebula that's like moving on its own. And like he gets these rumors that sound familiar as he's sitting around the bunk room one day and decides to look into it more and finds out, confirms with people, like, he knows what that is. That's a smear of VY572. And he knows they're going to be here for a little bit to recharge. And so he's got an opportunity to maybe find a way to capture this in a way that he could study later and use as his kind of VY572 compass. But he's not in charge of this ship. And it's not as simple as just like, he can't just easily go borrow a suit, get on a tether, and like go out there and scoop it up into a jar and put a lid on really tightly. This would require, like, the ship coordinating with him to actually move closer to the spot, help him. Like, it would probably take actual ship resources to be able to kind of suck this into a sealed container. Like, he would not be able to do this on his own. And it's entirely unrelated to anything anybody on the ship cares about. So, what's Emile going to do is the question. Can he convince somebody? Can he capitalize on this? Let's get to that in a moment. Why don't we first find out, what is this place? Because that might help us determine a little bit about what Emile might do. So I rolled a space sighting on the space encounter oracles to get an idea about, like, what makes this a waypoint. And what I got was, this is a turbulent gravitational wave. And so perhaps this is the reason why they had to stop. It's no particular, like, oh, here, we're picking up some snacks at the gas station kind of thing. It's nothing like that. They have to stop because the computer kind of called out, like, that it was like looking ahead on their course and realizing,
anomalous gravitational activity ahead, bringing out of warp.
Like that sort of thing. They come to a close. They find out the rumors happen. All the other things I talked about happen where they see this sort of moving nebula. And I think importantly, this smear, it's all related. So the turbulent gravitational wave is coming, like, every time this smear moves forward, it moves a little bit like, it like flaps like a ray. And when it does that, these gravitational waves just pulse out to the sides of it and make all kinds of just anomalous gravitational activity that are hard to account for. They screw up all the calculations in order to warp appropriately. And so, yeah, they're just seeing this. And these smears, to be clear, like, it's making a lot of gravitational waves because these smears are quite possibly the size of, like, a moon or something. Like, they're huge. They're utterly enormous in their own right. And yet they are but a tiny, tiny piece of VY572. Tiny. Maybe a moon is going a little bit, a small moon. But these things are very big. It's definitely bigger than this entire ship. And it's just this moving, pulsing, colorful smear going through space. it's making these ripples that are, it's almost like looking through a heat haze in the way that it's just distorting and bending the way light moves around it and stuff. Ooh, actually, that could be kind of cool. What if it's almost like invisible? It's not fully, but a lot of it is concealed because the light is sort of bending around it as it moves around from certain angles. And then from others, you get a direct shot. But like if you see it from the sides, there are these angles where it's like almost completely invisible as these like rolling pulses come towards you. And so they have to stop. They have to redo these calculations. And let's see. What could Emile do? I guess the question is there any way that he could try and do, like, collect a piece of it on his own? Certainly not without ditching Vert somehow. Like, he's got a tail this entire time. Vert has been shadowing him. He's not going to be able to just sneak off without Vert noticing. And Vert would probably stop him. So you'd have to make some kind of distraction in order to get away from that. You know, it starts running into matters of like, is this all truly, you know, is it worth it? Is it worth the price that it might cost him in order to investigate this as much as he wants to and take a piece of it when there are all of these people here that would find out and be mad at him and maybe do something about it very unpleasant? And I think the answer is no. He's not going to just go out and do something like that. He'd have to be able to convince them. So how could he make it seem like it's in their best interest to be able to study this smear? Perhaps he could frame it from the perspective of like, hey, look, like, this is a thing that has almost like a stealth technology to it. If we need to get back... Yeah, okay, I've got my angle on this. Emile is just going to talk with... I don't think he can just talk with Tycoon anytime he wants to. I think that he has to go through like the chain of command. Like there's the XO, Cypher, and he's got to run through them a lot of the time for this sort of like, unless he's been called upon to talk with Tycoon, you talk to Cypher first. So you get Cypher's attention. And I think even though Cypher was distracted at the time with a specific task and that task is over, I think that's just characteristic of Cypher in general, that Cypher is multitasking. They're always, like anytime you ever interact with her, she's always got that data pad, like coordinating things in other parts of the ship. Like she's always divided between her attention in different places. Like she's juggling a lot in order to maintain this ship and make sure everybody's doing what they need to do. And so Emile comes along and is just yet another one of those people giving her something to have to manage. He comes up and he says, Cypher, I've heard reports about the anomalous activity outside. And, you know, she doesn't even look up at Emile. She's still, you know, she's doing all the stuff on her tablet. Who knows what. Probably related to resetting the course and everything, or some kind of repairs that need to be done as a result of the ways the gravitational waves screwed up parts of the ship. All kinds of things that need to be recalibrated. And she's like, yeah, no, I'm listening. Yeah, well, go ahead. Actually, let's get a, I've not interacted with her first. I want to really quickly roll initial disposition to get an idea, like, how does she take to this sort of thing with Emile? Indifferent. Okay, I think I can keep it basically as I said. She's barely paying attention, but like, yeah, okay, go ahead. We'll go. What is it? Well, while we've been sitting here, I can't help but notice that there are certain angles where visually it doesn't even show up. You know, the gravity, and she like cuts them off and just like, yeah, no, we know gravitational waves. Of course, we're on top of it. Don't worry about it. What I'm saying, if you listen, and I think Emile like puts his hand over the pad for a moment, like obscures her view to try and fully get her attention. I'm going to do this as secure and advantage, but with iron, because like he's being very physical and straightforward with like his attempt to try and just get her attention. It's almost aggression. So it's either iron, or you could make an argument for heart, which would be slightly better. Resolve, command, sociability. Like it could be more about resolve, but or like it's almost like he's commanding her to pay attention. Yeah, I think that's a better fit than strength, endurance, or aggression. It's close, but we'll say this is a heart move as he's trying to just get her to fully pay attention to listen to what he's saying. Because he thinks that's, if she's not even listening, there's no way he's going to convince her to bring this up to the captain. So he does this. He blocks her view of the tablet. And let's see how this goes. Secure an advantage with heart. Okay, we get a strong hit on that. Incidentally, it would have been a strong hit on an iron move as well. Just in case you feel like it should have been iron, would have been the same result. So we succeed. We take 2 momentum and a +1 on the next move. So our momentum goes up to 4. We have the +1 on the next move as Emile, indeed, like, he makes his point. She gives a bit of a sigh and looks him more straight in the eye, goes, okay, yes, I'm listening. What? I'll just take a moment, but my thought is we're eventually going to have to go back through the blockade, right? Yeah, of course. Presumably, if this all goes well, we're going to have to get back through. What's your point? My point is, those gravitational waves, the lensing effect that they have, that makes it pretty hard to detect, doesn't it? I mean, we can barely see it from certain angles. She, like, starts nodding along, like, piecing together a little bit of what he's saying, but we're going to see how well he really puts it together when we eventually make this compel move, because he puts it as, like, so if we're able to capture a piece of that, maybe even a large piece, we might be able to study it and use the kind of effect it's making as it moves through space, either through using a piece of it itself to make this effect, or just figuring out how it does it. We could make that same kind of lensing effect. We could maybe have basically a stealth system on this ship. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you how useful that could be in a number of situations, especially while we're in the terminus. So here's the move. Emile is trying to use Heart to compel her to bring this up to the captain and basically make it official business that they are going to move over and try and take a piece of this smear. So let's make that move. Heart with a +1. As Emile makes his case that it is worth their time to divert and do this. However, this is a miss. They refuse or make a demand that costs you greatly, pay the price. I think in this case, because it's not really that important to what's going on and everything, and it's not like he's doing something that's going to make her pissed off or anything. The thing that would have most had the chance to do that was when he blocked her view of the tablet, but he made his case. She's thinking it over. She's got too many other things to do and says, no, that's a negative. We know too little about it. We don't have time to study it. We've got other priorities. I'm sorry. If it's still here on the way back after we've actually picked up the power core, maybe. Bring it up to me again then. But right now, there's absolutely no time. We got to stay on course. She just walks on and kind of over her shoulder just says, instead of worrying about the operations of the ship, why don't you just get yourself familiar with this place? Just don't worry about it. Leave it to us. And so Emile is going to do that. He accepts it as just like, I tried. Hopefully it's here next time. But they got to move on, and it may or may not be here when they get back. Over the course of this journey, while they're stopped here, and she gave the suggestion of like, just get to know the ship a little bit more, Emile might interpret that as getting to know the people. And so I think Emile, I want to set up his ability to maybe stop being so shaken. Give him a chance to maybe hearten a little bit. Now, he's not going to have enough time to sojourn, but perhaps there's an area of this ship that's basically like the tavern or whatever. Like it's the real socialization place where everybody, they knock back, have a few drinks. Maybe there's even some form of entertainment that goes on there. Like, let's roll some oracles to figure out like how do they stay entertained in the like tavern-ish area? What do they do? I'm going to roll an action and theme to get an idea of like what sort of thing would they do to stay entertained here. In addition to drinking, what's the entertainment? And I got change and faction. Now, I don't think that's literal. They don't, for their entertainment, decide to stop being vault hunters. It's nothing like that. It suggests to me a like team-based thing, or almost like, what it brings to mind for me is kind of like a Royal Rumble kind of wrestling match sort of thing, where people are always like, they have temporary alliances, but it's definitely like who's the last person who's going to survive in the ring. So there'll be moments where people work together, but then they turn on each other. It's a codified wrestling event that they call something. You know what? I'm going to leave that to you guys. I don't know what they call it right now, but for the type of thing I might have ordinarily said in the outro, if you have ideas about what is the name of this sort of like physical challenge that's team-based and like last person surviving in a ring kind of setup. Like it's basically like a Royal Rumble, but maybe it has its own kind of specific rules to it. If you have ideas about what that should be called based on that description and maybe more that we get as we continue this scene, send me your ideas at starforgepod@gmail.com, and I would be happy to name it that. Anyhow, he walks into this environment and yeah, it's all of these people. They're making bets. There's a match going on right now. Or maybe it's not. Let's see. Is there a match going on when he goes in, or is it everybody setting up for the match? Now, yeah, you know what? I want to say it's still being set up. People are still signing up for it because there's some kind of prize or whatever for the winner. And to be clear, this ship isn't just a bunch of just like brutish pirates or whatever, but there are some members that are a little bit more in that direction that get a little bit more physical. Some of them, they need to keep their fighting skills in shape in order to deal with certain kind of bad situations on their pursuit of vaults, or when they get into scraps with trying to get information that they have to steal from the Imperium or whatever. Like, some people are a little bit more physical, and they're getting set up in the bar. They're taking signups for who wants to be a part of this to maybe be able to take the prize, which is, I'm going to roll descriptor and focus on that to get an idea of what is the prize. And I got open and structure, which suggests to me maybe there's an area of the ship that's like you get a key to it for the day. Like there's a particular nice area. It's almost like the holodeck or whatever. Like you get, actually, yeah, let's go with first thought, best thought on that. They have a small, it's like the holodeck. It is not nearly as capable as like a Star Trek holodeck. It's not that illusory. It's not that convincing, but you can run some programs in there and interact with, do some little like kind of game-like experiences and stuff that it's a privilege to be able to do it. You only get so much time because usually you have work to do around here. But if you win today, you get access to the holodeck for a time. You have a slot there on an upcoming day of your choice or whatever. They get it all worked out. And so there are a number of people that are big and strong and like clearly would be able to beat Emile in this sort of thing. Like he would have no chance in this kind of contest. But he's at the bar, he's got his drink, he's kind of questioning a little bit of what's going on, finding out about this whole contest. And he sees that also in the bar, of course, because he follows Emile everywhere, is Vert. Vert's keeping an eye on him. He's not drinking or anything while Emile gets his little libation of choice. And at some point, when Emile is just kind of people watching a little bit, getting his bearings, he just says, he looks over at Vert and says, "Man, you don't quit, do you?"
"Never. I set my eyes on a task and then I see it through. I'm not the distractible type like you seem to be. We vault hunters. We know how to keep something in our sights. Right now, that something is you."
Jesus, man. Just look, it's not like we're alone on the ship anymore. We got a whole ship full of vault hunters here with me right now. Let's just take a break. Just for a moment. Have a drink. In fact, like gestures over to the sign-up sheet. I bet you could easily sweep everybody in here. Power armor or no, I've seen what you can do. You could definitely be the last person in the ring. Just take a moment. If it helps, I'll even manacle myself to a bar. There's like a little like metal bar running across the top of the booth that Emile is situated in right now. You can manacle me to the bar if you want. I just want to see if you can pull it off. And we're gonna make another compel roll here to see if like Emile can make a little bit of progress to try and just try and get Vert to loosen up just a little bit and indeed participate in this event. Because he is kind of speaking Vert's language. He's getting a little bit bored with all this and he could use a little bit of action. So let's make another compel move here. Just using heart, trying to convince Vert. And we get... Alright, we have a weak hit. It was almost a strong hit. I was just one away. They'll do what you want or agree to your conditions. But their agreement comes with a demand or complication. Envision the counteroffer and take +1 momentum. Honestly, had I not already suggested it, that would have been the, okay, but you got to handcuff yourself. You got to manacle yourself here. I think because that was already part of it, the counteroffer is going to be that, let's see, if Emile, if Vert loses, there's something Emile has to do. Now, because then he could take a dive. Maybe it's even like if I do win, there's something that Emile has to do for him. And, let's see, what would be an interesting thing? I'm going to roll a character goal oracle right here to get an idea of what might Vert want from Emile. Because I'm feeling a little bit uninspired at the moment of how to add an additional small wrinkle to this. So I'm going to use this to help. Undermine a relationship. Now that's interesting. Not the only relationship I can think of that Vert would even think to, like, would even know about that Emile has would be, like, the relationship between Emile and Fern. That's too unrelated to really matter for this, though. I'm not gonna... I don't think it would be important to Vert to be like, yeah, you gotta break up with Fern. That would be too tangential. Oh, no. I've got it. It's not related to that, I guess I could draw a weak connection to it being about undermining a relationship, but it's really just, I just thought of this thing. It's obvious. Vert will sign up if Emile signs up. He like says it almost jokingly, not expecting that Emile would be willing to do it, because he's like so clearly would just utterly beat the crap up in this ring. But Emile, looking to try and soften this border between him and Vert, like to make better on it, and also like just to lift his own spirits, getting a chance to just actually socialize with people and do something like just in the name of fun, which he hasn't had to do in a while, or hasn't gotten to do in a while. Emile surprises Vert, who is, again, he said it as just like, oh, yeah, I'll do it when you sign up as well. And Emile just like knocks back the rest of his drink, puts it down and says, let's go to that sign-up sheet then. And like claps a hand on Vert's shoulder and says, deal's a deal, right? Setting something in your sights? Come on, let's do it. And Vert is taken aback, like totally blindsided by the idea that Emile would have actually said yes. I was like, wait, shit. And walks over and like, it's almost like a game of chicken where Emile is like about to sign up his name, like moves over to the board where one like writes in their name into like this drawing because they like randomly determine who starts when and all of that. And walks over there and just says to Vert like, hey, last chance to change your mind. I mean, if you're giving up on what you said you were going to do, then now's the chance because I'm about to sign up. And as soon as I do, well, a deal's a deal, right? So you're doing this? And Vert just goes, sign the goddamn board. And Emile goes, all right, and puts his name in. Vert angrily writes his own name in and goes, you're going to get killed in there. And it's not going to be my fault. It's going to be your fault if we're the final two. Huh? So what do you say if it somehow gets down to the two of us at the same time? Are you going to kill me? And Vert just like starts cracking his neck and goes, I'm not going to kill you, but let's just say you're going to be getting up to a lot less nonsense for the rest of this duration. And yeah, let's figure this out. So I'm not going to make too many rolls out of this, but Emile and Vert sign up for this contest with a number of other people. It's like it's as described. It functions a lot like a Royal Rumble where it starts off with a couple of people in the ring and then every so many seconds a new person comes in and it's all about being the last person in the ring. It's you're trying to get everybody to ring out. Like we're just following those direct rules. You got to wrestle them out and everything. So Emile has a chance to think about this. Now, I don't think people are allowed any weapons. It's just raw wrestling. I think the power armor would not be allowed. It's got to be just your own. So Vert would have to take all of that off. Emile would be taking off his computer and everything probably just because he wouldn't want it to get damaged. So what does he do in advance to set himself up for success? Like he knows he'd be bad at this. He doesn't have the iron to pull it off, so he's going to have to somehow have a plan. But he needs to not be like fully cheating. It just needs to be good strategy. So I think Vert would be very pissed with him if he doesn't do it legit. Actually, you know what? I mean, realistically, as I said, Emile has no way of surviving this or winning. It's not going to happen. That's not even the point. He doesn't need to win. The real point of this is getting a chance to do the heart move to just get himself out of this like terrible spirit situation, remove his shaken nature. We're just going to do it like that. We know Emile doesn't win. But through the course of this activity, how well does he get to just hang out with Vert and soften those edges a little bit, get to know some of the other Vault Hunters, and be seen as like maybe a little bit differently in their eyes for having bothered to participate? Like he's going to try and command the room a little bit more to make his presence known and kind of play into the idea that it's so silly that he's even bothering at this, like, look at me kind of thing. He's going to really try and play to the crowd. Oh, which I'm going to do this as two moves. That'll be the way he secures an advantage. Because he's going to really try and play to the crowd to get them on his side so that he's having a good time. Where, like, win or lose, they're at least cheering him on or, like, giving a lot of encouragement and stuff by playing into how much of a fool he looks like. And so eventually he might come off as the underdog, and maybe he'll have a good time later in the night because he's still trying. So that's a secure an advantage with Heart that he's going to do right now. Is he just tries to play into being the underdog, and that it's funny that he's doing this, but also a little bit commendable. So with that, we get... Ooh, hey, miss. Wrong room. They are not into it. You fail or your assumptions betray you. Yeah, Emile tries to do all of that, but it does not come off right at all. They just see him as the outsider. Any amount of him being they want him to go down. And as a result, people are targeting him hard. Like, even when they have, like, he's not the most dangerous person at all, but I think basically they don't, the reason why this is a pay the price is Emile lasts in the ring because they don't want to throw him out of the ring. They want him to get abused. If he got ringed out really quickly, he'd be fine for the rest of the night. But they actively keep him in until like the very end because they want to keep wailing on him and not letting him get away with it. So the pay the price on this for doing all of that and like really kind of goading them is, I could make this as just a health suffer move. Like he only has 1 health as it is right now. I think it's the only fair thing. Like that's the danger of trying to secure an advantage like this, as you open yourself up to it going worse. And yeah, so I may get some spirit back, but my health is going to go down. So let's suffer that. It's just going to be 1. And because it's a 0, I have to try and endure it. So we get to roll our iron and find out what happens. Oh, I actually got a strong hit on that. He deals with it. He's getting just abused all night, but he keeps shaking it off, and he gets that +1 health right back. He is doing the full-on you didn't knock me down thing from Raging Bull. Like, and so like they keep booing and being like, nobody is into it of the Vault Hunters or anything. But they are enjoying the opportunity to keep trying. And like, he is going to be so fucked up by the end of this night, battered and bruised, but he's dealing with it. And like, maybe some of it is the reason he's not as hurt, actually. Maybe it's the opposite. Like, he's kind of taking it and rolling with the punches a little bit and not getting all of them and getting his own in back. He sticks around for a while, but definitely gets pretty beat up. It's just nothing serious enough to actually bring his health down. And that was him trying to secure an advantage. Let's just see how well he's able to socialize as he does the heart move over the course of the night with various people as a result of all of what happened in the ring. I think at the end of it all, it gets down to him and Vert and one other person because they were actively trying to keep him in the ring all night to just beat him up. And then for the sake of the good drama, and they talked about it before, Vert completely like throws the other person aside, and it's down to just Emile and Vert, and it's just what they were talking about, where he's like, where Emile asked him, if it's down to the 2 of us, are you going to kill me? And he implied he's going to utterly beat the crap out of him. But Emile has already had the crap really beaten out of him, so in this moment, what happens? Does Vert indeed make good on what he said? Well, the other point of that scene was Vert saying that he'd stick by his word and keep his sights on it, so I think Emile sees in his eyes, like, he's going to make good on it. He's not going to just immediately throw me out of the ring either. He's still mad at me and is going to utterly abuse me before eventually just, I can't take anymore, and he's going to throw me out of the ring. So that all definitely happens. Emile continues to take bad abuse from Vert and eventually definitely loses. But the heart move is after it all. Like, did he take it all well enough to impress Vert a little bit and just like share a little bit of that, like, hey, I can play too. I'm not just a complete weakling. I can take a punch and I'll stick by my word. Because Emile, like, I think Vert gave him many opportunities to just be like, he's like kind of saying low under his breath, like, just take a dive, roll out of the ring and I won't have to do this. And Emile just goes, a deal's a deal, man. Do what you gotta do. And like starts throwing his own punches and like completely ineffectually, Vert catches the punch and like wrenches his arm back. But Emile never gives up. Is that enough to work on Vert? So let's make the heart move. So we get to roll our heart here. And let's see what happens. I got a strong hit. It worked on him. Okay, Vert does totally respect that. So you find companionship or comfort, and your spirit is strengthened. If you are shaken, which I am, clear the impact and take +1 spirit. Oh, thank God. All right, we are no longer shaken. Our spirit is now at 1 instead of 0. Otherwise, take +2 spirit. Well, we were shaken, so we can only take the 1. We were not making this move as a part of a sojourn, so we don't get to take +1 more. But hey, great effect there, as indeed what it represents is at the end of it all, as mentioned, it was indeed enough to really kind of bring Vert around a little bit. And they're sitting at the table afterwards, both now having a drink, Emile in particular, because he's feeling sore already. Vert was fine through a lot of it. He didn't get that roughed up. He did indeed win. He's got his pass, and he's just kind of like, they're maybe not saying too much, but they're both at the same booth. They're now both drinking, which is different from before. And Emile kind of raises his glass up and just says to Vert, like, congratulations. You earned it. And Vert simply says back to him, you held your own too. And clinks his glass. And that's all that happens. But it's all Emile needs to know that, like, maybe someday he actually can bring Vert around. He's not there yet. Definitely not there. But maybe it's not a lost cause. Maybe he just needed to let Vert beat the shit out of him for a little bit. But before there's much of a chance to really revel in that kind of moment and that recognition that maybe I've got a friend here, an announcement comes on saying that the warp engines are prepared, the calculations have been made. Navigational personnel, get back to your stations as we make our next jump. But as for that next waypoint and what it might hold, well, that's a question for next time. I sure hope you don't mind when I get tangled in the weeds like this session and wind up just focusing more on certain aspects than I really thought. Like, I thought for sure, of course we're going to get to Taiga, but the more we incorporate new characters into this and get to know this world and give the opportunities to just like really act out these moments and explorations of what's going on the ship, I just get so tangled up in that stuff that I realize, you know what? I want the session to be about this now. I want to know all about this Royal Rumble and whether or not Emile is able to use it to raise rank with Vert. I know it has nothing to do with any of the vows, and we've made like so little progress on our real quest and like what the game is about, but I love it so much. I hope you're on board with that sort of thing happening from time to time, or frequently as it seems to be. So once again, I'd love to have a more particular name for like the contest that they have there, the name of the Royal Rumble, what they would call it in their world. So again, if you have any ideas, please do send them to me at starforgepod@gmail.com. Would love to hear your suggestions on that. Otherwise, play me out, music.